Over the years, we've got quite used to programs having feather solutions built in. So if you look at programs like ZBrush and Blender and Maya and Cinema 4D, they all have either hair or some kind of hair or fur solution. So in Nomad, which is a fairly new program on the market, how do we make feathers when we don't have a solution already built in? So what this video is all about is how we can just use the tools that we've got today and we can make something really cool and feather-like with just those basic tools. So let's dive right in and make a feather in Nomad. So first things first, we need something to put the feathers on. So we're going to use this. I called it an Archaeopteryx, but it's not even close to being an accurate representation of that little dinosaur. But it's good enough for what we want to do. So I quickly sculpted this, and I'll just run the time lapse down below of how I sculpted this. And then what I basically did was I started with creating the feathers. So I'll show you on here before I show you the full time lapse at the end of this video. So what I wanted to do is basically do really strong neck feathers on this. So it's a very illustrative piece. The back of it at the moment is the same as the front, but in the final piece I did some muscle work and some anatomy underneath the feathers on the other side. So for this particular one, I'm going to focus on this back area here on the neck. And as you can see, I've already sculpted in using some of the alpha brushes that I've created. I've put some of the little pimples on the skin and where the follicles that hold the feathers are. And I always do that. So if you're going to do feathers in Nomad, do as much underlying painting and sculpting as you can, because wherever light pushes onto the feathers and then you can see through, you know, the more interesting detail you've got underneath, the better it will be. So if you can look on the wings there, I've just roughly sculpted what we call the primaries. So I've just done some indication of the main feathers there, but nothing, that isn't what this particular project was about. So let's dive in and just make a feather. And you're probably not going to like this if you come from a background where you're used to having things that would either clone or do instances for you. If you're new to this and you're certainly from an illustrative background and you just want to make something that looks good for your illustration, then that's what this is about. There is no feather button. Don't go looking for anything that says generate feathers or generate splines or generate hair. This is simply about a workaround for Nomad as it stands today. So let's hide those things for now. And we'll start with a simple primitive plane like this. And this is how I started when I did a lot of experimentation to see how I wanted to make this work. And this is what I came up with. I was going to use a more sculptural approach to feathers, but the amount of feathers you need, suddenly that becomes a problem when you get into the thousands and thousands of feathers. So put the wireframe on at the bottom there, and you can see it's quite a huge grid, so we don't want that. So we go into our primitive, or into our topology, sorry, and then bring those divisions right down to a very minimal amount. So almost not all the way down to just a simple plane, but something simple like that. And that will do for now. So we just validate that, and that's our first shape for a feather. Now, again, in other programs, what we would do is we would use textures and alphas to mask out the shape of a feather, and then do what's called a normal map to put some nice surface detail on this as well as a texture. And we don't have that in Nomad, so we're going to be quite limited to what we can do. We could, and I did try to bring the material down to a transparency like this and paint it in different ways, and you can try that and you can get some good effects doing that later on, but for now we're just going to go with a solid piece of geometry for the feather. And I will warn you, it looks rubbish for the first half of when you're creating it. The power comes when you're moving individual feathers and painting them towards the end of the process. So what do we do with this now? So we need move, and what we're going to do is there's no, I think symmetry is on at the moment actually, so we'll leave symmetry on while we just shape it. So I just made one feather like this, so small brush size, small intensity, and I just shaped it into a feather. That quad on the corner there stays, but it gives me that rounded corner there like that. Brought that up, tried to keep the quads as similar as I could, because this is going to subdivide just once. So and then I just brought it back in a little bit at the back end, so it's roughly like the feather that you would see on the back of a vulture or an eagle or something like that. And you can see there, I'll just put it on screen which feathers I'm aiming for. And then I went from the top and I just pulled it up, and that just gives me a little bit of a bend like so. Now underneath I've got backface culling turned off, so you can see the underneath. So once I'd got that basic shape like so with a curve in it, I then just subdivided it once. So we come up here and we'll go multi-resolution, subdivide once, and we'll delete the lower, and that gets rid of the lower. So that is my first feather. And then I just simply used the paint tool, and I went for it's a brownish reddish colour, or well, browny yellowy actually, like an orangey colour, and I just painted the back, and then I came a little bit lighter and a little bit warmer, and then I went a little bit lighter towards the tip. Now it's interesting with these feathers, if you do some research in feathers, you'll find that a lot of primaries and the larger feathers will have that, which is black on the end of their wings. And you might think with natural selection and evolution that colours are that's for whatever reason that it evolved, whether it be for sexual selection or camouflage sometimes. But when you look into it, black tips on the ends of feathers are actually because there's a lot of, wherever there's black, that's because there's a lot of melanin. And if there's a lot of melanin brings strength to a structure. So actually, strong feathers are stronger wherever they're darker. So you'll find that some wingtips of birds, where they go black, it just really protects them when they're doing what they do as birds. So that's just an interesting fact that I dropped on when I was researching all of this. So that for me now is quite. I don't want that black on the end, do I? That's enough. You can use something like, we've used paint there, but you can use smudge. And if you're brave enough and your machine's capable enough, which it certainly will be with those new iPads that are coming along with 16 gig of RAM, but for this little one with the 6 gig of RAM, then I wouldn't go much higher than that for what I'm doing. And that would be my first feather. So if that's my first feather, then I've got to get a few of them onto the creature. So what we'll do is, we're only going to work on one side. I'm going to move the pivot point of the feather by hitting pivot and then drop it on the end, like so. And then we can scale it up and down with the outer orange ring, like so. Now what I'm going to do is, this is going to take forever to apply if we were doing it singly and copying it and moving it. So I'll show you what I do. Firstly, one thing that I do is I look at the different shapes that I've got on the creature. So I've got a curve that comes, let me put him in the middle so you can see. So I've got a curve that comes right around the back of the neck, and then it's the opposite, so that's a concave curve, and then there's a curve in here which is convex, and then concave again down at the back. So that gives me three areas where I know how those feathers are going to curve. So that's a good thing to think about at the start. So that single feather there, we're going to bring him right to the front of the head. Looking at my reference there, which I like to paint my own reference, as those of you that have been followed me for a while will know. I can't remember where I got my original idea from. It was just a Pinterest search, I think. But it, it's based on, it's very rarely is it not based on some other reference. So that's the first feather laid down, and then what I do is I start duplicating. So I'm going to keep this panel open by clicking the little pin, and I'm just going to duplicate it. I'm going to move it along, and I'm going to rotate it, and then with economies of scale straight away, I'm going to say that one and that one. I'm going to simple merge them and then duplicate them. So bring them along and then have a look down like so, scale it down a little bit, move it along like so, and then back a bit as well and rotate it so it looks roughly how I'd want it. Maybe scale it if it needs it. That one's okay, and then I'm not going to merge the 4 of them. I'm going to keep them separate for now, and then do the same again. And that's one line again. Don't worry about the other side. You know, at some point we can duplicate it, the whole assembly across, and then make some random, you know, we'll change it so it doesn't look too symmetrical. And that will probably do for the first one. So I'm going to take all of them. What I will do, just to help you see, is I'm going to outline all of the selections with this button here. And I'll make it a colour that we can really see, so bright green. So you can see I've selected all of them, simple merge, and that's my first row of them done. So I'm going to then duplicate that. I'm going to push it along. I'm going to bring it down a tiny bit because you want them to step a little bit. You don't want your feathers to be just in a row. And again, I did tell you this will look, you know, cheap and cheerful for quite a while. You're going to do, you know, work all the way down the back of the head, and it's not going to look strong at all. Duplicate it again. I'm going to rotate it again and bring it down and back. Down like so. And then I'll flatten this hair down, flatten this fur down. Hair? Where did I get that? Flatten this feather down a little bit like that. Now with that already, in fact, I'll do one more. And that'll bring it back up here like this. And we'll bring it up off the surface a bit, like so. So I'll select all of them, and I'll just simple merge them together. And now with the move brush, now I'm going to take the move brush, smallish brush size, low intensity. And if you see what happens now, if I move, they're moving each individual feather. And that's great for this particular bit because I just want to tweak it until I've got something that looks roughly right for what I'm doing. So it needs to be down the center line. The feathers need to be stepped. Don't worry about the colours. It's going to look garbage. I can't tell you enough. I mean, I was stressing over this when I was learning how to do it. It just wasn't, you know, it wasn't giving me what I wanted at all for quite some time when I was working this out. So bring these feathers out like so. Make sure that the feathers are actually going into the surface where the rachis, the central shaft of the feather, goes into the bird itself. So that would be fine. Now, if you want to move them, instead of doing individual, if you want to move them all, go up to your settings, and then, so basically up to this bit, so settings for stroke, and look down here where it says connected topology, turn that off, and now you've got the whole assembly, it is movable now. And that's how we would adjust it later on when we want to do more sweeping moves for the whole, every single feather as a group. So that's, we know now that we'll be turning that on and off as we see fit. So now we've got one group. It's very simple to duplicate that. And bear in mind, this is now a concave one. We're going to need a convex one in a minute. So we'll take that and we'll move this one along. Just get all of our buttons back. So we'll just duplicate that, rotate it around. And then you can see there's some crossover. So I'll go back to move. Let's do this like this so we can see it a little bit easier. And now we'll just move individual feathers. And as you get the individual feathers fitting together nicely, it starts coming together a lot quicker than you would imagine. At first, it seems like it's going to take weeks and weeks to get all this done, and it doesn't. It comes together really, really quickly, as you'll see in a minute. So, for example, if we were happy with that, we would simple merge that, and then we would do the same again. Move it along. And now we've got a great big chunk sitting high above. You can see how it sticks out too much there. So we need move tool. And we just then realign it. Make sure you switch back to connected topology off, and then you can sink it into the surface. And it wouldn't be a bad idea at this point to do another one. Oops, duplicated the body then by mistake. So we want this one, duplicate it, scale it down, rotate it, scale it down, and that becomes this neck batch here. And because this particular bit is concave, it kind of does fit fairly okay. If that was convex and further down the neck, it wouldn't be much use to you at this point. So you can see I'm doing patches now, and we're speeding up quite dramatically now. And I might even lengthen them a little bit. You saw there that I just used the little green button and lengthened it a little bit, and maybe even push it out so they sink in. And you're thinking about your reference and the length of your feathers, because as it gets to the back, it's going to need some length to it as well. So if we're happy with that as it stands, then let's just select all of them as a group, and we'll do another duplicate, bring that entire thing around, bring it down, bring it in, like so. And you can see what we're doing. We're building it up very, very quickly now. And you'll see it on the time lapse when I show you the other couple of projects that I did. You can see how quickly this will come together. Do make sure that you're sitting firmly into the surface. That's one thing I noticed with mine. There's a couple of times it was floating above, and I didn't like that. You see how they're more elongated now, and we can pull them as we're pulling them into the right location. They seem to just get longer because you're tweaking them and pulling them, and instantly they start to look like feathers. I found anyway, as I started pulling them in, just like this, they started to form as a feather does, as it does fall. And as you'll see on references of eagle necks and anything that's got this. I mean, on a rooster or a chicken, they call them hackles on the back of the neck. So there's lots of different types of feathers you can research, and lots of different ways of making these feathers. But this is the core way that I found that I like, that gives me the effect that you see in my experiments that I've been doing on my Instagram and Twitter. So I'll just do a couple more, and then I'll move on to time lapse for you, because I don't want to. I think the core of what I've ever explained gives you everything the basis of how I've been doing it. So we'll get this one in line. They look pretty good. Now we'll go in as an individual. So just duplicate this one here, and that should give us enough just to show you the rest of the process then. So I'm just scaling it down, rotating it around, bringing it up to this area. And I will do one more duplicate. You see I'm just using the individual scale buttons and the main scale button as well. So there we go. So that one's done. That one. Now back to, in fact, we'll just seal all them together for now. So merge all them together, simple merge, and then back to our move tool, and then we want to go to connect topology, and I think now I can turn the outline off, because I think you've got an idea of what I'm doing. And now it's just a case of wherever we've got holes and problems, we can just pull those out or push them back depending on the need of the individual area. Wherever you've got something that's going to be front and center, then go in by hand like this and just tweak the individual feathers. And because it's set to, not connected, you're going to be able to just tweak them one by one in the areas that you want. I've just gone onto the skin there by mistake, so just be careful. And there are some places where feathers get rumpled up and they start going in different directions. So don't worry about putting some variety in there. Make sure you're looking at reference. So for example, I definitely want to see some feathers that are going to be misshaped by length, and they're going to be quite long and coming out of the back like this. So every now and again, just put one random one sticking out. Look for any holes, and that would probably do it. So now that's getting close. If I do a 3-finger roll round with the light, you'll see there that we've already got a nice volume. If we were to duplicate that now and use it, it wouldn't be a horrendous shaping of the feathers. But we just need to do a few more things. So one thing that I found that really makes this work is thinking about the feather coloration. We now want to paint it with some alphas. So remember at the start I showed you that we could go use the material, and you could bring the material to transparent. So there may be an opportunity for you to do that. Now I don't like it because it goes transparent around the edges like that. So you can paint. If I just show you, I'll just use a black or a very, very dark brown, high intensity. And if you paint some of those feathers, it does help with the transparency, but I don't like that. It shows way too much on the edges. Looks quite good here, but it doesn't look good around the edges, so I didn't choose to do that. I didn't think that it needed that. What I decided to do towards the end of the process is I would use a lot of depth of field, which would make it nice and blurred around those edges, which gave me the effect that I want. So looking at the reference, I wanted like a nice yellowy tan kind of colour through the middle. So I'm going to choose one of my alphas, and I'd use something that, it doesn't really matter what you use, but make sure there's a lot of variety in it. So I'm going to use something like, something silly really, like a scale alpha. So you wouldn't think it would be, oh, here we go, this is a crocodile back. We'll use this one. And we're on paint, and we're on sort of mid-intensity, and we can just paint like this. Now, because of the fact they're all connected, now you can see you're just painting through the model. So that works really well if you want to lay down a specific line of colour. But that still wasn't really helping me with some of the things that I wanted. So what I decided to do then was, say we go now to a darker brown colour. We change it to, in the settings now, to come down here. Stroke type will be grab, dynamic radius, and then we'll do a much more dotty alpha. So something that, like this one, for example, that's, again, it's scales but dots. And then as you pull them out, can you see that it's, I'll do it really, really high intensity so you see it. It's giving you a painting across the whole of the feathers, the feather range that you've got. And that gives what's like what I'd call like a dappled effect on the feather. And that's really confusing your eye, because it's now breaking up the silhouettes of each of the feathers. And if you can just see, if I do it a little bit, in fact, I'll do it in places where I'll go over again. But what's happening there is you're getting this really bird-like feather effect where the colours are blending in together. And if you keep changing the colour, so I'm going to go really dark here. If I come into the deep areas, the darker areas, that really helps to mask the nature of how I made these feathers. So you're getting to almost like an owl-like effect here already with very, very little work. So it's gone from a cheesy looking feather collection that you can clearly tell it's CG to suddenly being an approximation of what feathers would look like. And I know we're only low polygon, so we're not, we're not getting really, if you go really, really close in, it's not brilliant. And again, I'm never going to try and make this be a feather solution that I would get in Blender or Cinema 4D or Maya. But this technique gives me the look and feel of the feathers that I wanted. And you can see that even with just those few minutes, that's how I was getting the really nice kind of mottled effect. So if I just move that light round a little bit now, bring it down. The lighting is crucial. Make sure if you haven't already and you aren't familiar with this kind of stuff, make sure you watch my lighting video, because it explains the power of the rim light and the key light and the fill light, and especially this one, the rim light. And there you can see what an effect that's having on the feathers. So it's giving us that nice back-filled light there, that's really, really helping. Now watch, if I then go to post-processing, and this is the next big key thing. So I think I've explained that first bit well enough. I'm sure you could go ahead and do that now. So that's a number of things. It's the shape, the low polygon, the painting, layering them, moving the feathers to random areas. Again, only a few minutes. It hasn't taken what you might have thought, which would be hours to lay down feather by feather. Now, the last bit of this section, we'll just have a look at post-processing. We're going to switch on reflection, definitely. Ambient occlusion, definitely. See how dark it went instantly? That means you're going to get the darker darks, so your occluded areas are now working for you, so it makes it even more feather-like. So what else do we need? So we need depth of field, and we need a high far blur. What that means is anything on that edge there, as you can see, is going to be blurred, and that really helps you when you see the nose there is blurred now, or the feather at the back here is blurred now. So that's another instant way of making it look like you're doing something in the real world. And then keep working down. Oh, don't use bloom. I very, very rarely use bloom. Tone mapping I only use occasionally, but I do like doing this, which is desaturating it. And that means you can check your values of your image, and you might see me doing that quite a bit on my Instagram, where I just switch the tone mapping on and we have a quick look at it from a value point of view. So look with depth of field and the just a value check. Look how powerful that image looks now. So what is in essence quite a simple model is suddenly starting to read really, really well as an image, or as a model. Okay, so we'll turn that off. So tone mapping off, and then the last one, you can try this. So this is curvature. Now look how crazy that suddenly looks. So as an illustrative piece, that's cracking. I really, really like the look of that. And you'll see, again, I use this kind of scale effect to good effect. And what I generally do is this. So I go in the curvature, I'd set the set the cavity first of all to match one of the tones in the image. So for example, if I'm going for this sandy color, then I might just make that like something along those lines. And then the bump, same sort of hue, so the same color, but a little bit darker and a little bit more saturation. And that way you'll get just that highlight like that. And that, from a distance, with all the other things we've set, gives a very, very nice feather effect. So these are all the little things that all, when you compound them, this is how you get a really nice feather effect. Vignette is always useful for drama. And then the big one at the end, sharpness. And your sharpness will make it pop very illustrative there like that. If I turn the curvature off, it would be, less illustrative, and in fact I'll show you what I mean rather than just waffling. Let me just turn it. The cavity then goes black, and then your bump can go lighter, and you can see there you get a very, very different effect. So you can have a play with that and work out what's going to work for you and your individual image. So none of this is single click stuff. You're not going to get a look that you want without playing with the range of things that I've shown you. So that's how I do it. That's generally how I do it. Take a look at the time lapse next, and I'll talk over. I'll do two of them. I'll do this one, which is the Archaeopteryx, and I'll do the eagle that I did, and I'll quickly just talk you through what it took to make those images. But have a go at that and post your join us on our Facebook groups, or in any of our groups, or in any of the online places that you can find in the link below, and show me what you can do with feathers in Nomad. So to finish the Archaeopteryx, all there was left to do really was to just carry on patching the feathers, and bear in mind that some are turned inwards and some are turned outwards, so I had to adjust that a little bit. I left symmetry on there, so I had to split that group. And bear in mind, what you're seeing on screen there is only one half, so obviously at some point I would have to use the mirror option and then basically just mirror off the other half, and then even it out along the back. So I've just done the breast feathers there, and I've just done 3 patches, going all the way down the belly, same colours, same same group of feathers actually, and then just a little bit of a tweak using the move tool. Duplicate them where you want some more depth or more volume in the feathers, and then just select them all and group them all, and very quickly you get a really quite a realistic looking feather look with just that, all from that one feather. Now lots of lighting, lots of painting needed. I can't stress enough that what I found with doing this is there is no very simple quick solution. It's a case of finding all of these little tips and tricks and different parts and the bits of post-processing that give you the effect overall. You won't get a good look if you just focus on the painting, for example. And then with that post-processing, with things like the sharpness and things like the changing the background and quite a few little final details, like individual feathers getting pulled out there, and then making sure that there's nothing that really looks like it's odd or any feathers sticking in the wrong place, or whether the wing, this primary wing, the big wing at the front, didn't even have feathers on it. That was just painted on. So a lot of the times that was out of focus because we got the depth of field set quite high. And apart from a few more tweaks, and obviously there I did anatomy on the other side of the model, which isn't what this video is about, but we got the kind of feather look that we want, and a lot of the really cool part of this type of model and feather modeling is that you use a lot of lighting tricks, so make sure you focus on those. So I wanted to try the whole process again after I'd kind of refined how I think I would do it. I went and did the whole process several times just to make sure I was comfortable how to do it. So this is the whole process again, but with this time we're using a bald, like an American bald eagle. So we went for, this time it's a bird, not a dinosaur. Same process, different color variation. And before I went for the white on the back and the proper traditional bald eagle white head, I just thought I would paint it up as a brown feather, because the underlying feathers were going to be brown. So as you can see there, I've done like a red and a golden effect, and exactly as we did with the dinosaur, just laying that first line down, duplicate that first line, merge it all together with simple merge, and that gives you your initial start. And very quickly, because you're just combining them, you get to a point where you're doing it really quickly, because it's a whole group, and you get that really cool, because it's a whole group in one go, you're pretty much building up the look within a few minutes. So it feels like it will take a long time, but as you can see, I know this is speeded up and time ramped, but it doesn't take as long as you would imagine. I definitely think if this is something you want to do a bit more professionally, then you should be looking at what Blender can offer you. You can look at ZBrush and you can look at fiber mesh, but if you want it to be much more user-friendly in other scenarios and you want to take it out to other programs or to game, then look to something like Blender or Maya or one of the more animation focused packages. So same story with the lighting here. So I got the first pass of feathers done. It doesn't look very realistic at all at the moment, so I really just wanted to get the first basic set of feathers down, and then lock down a bit of the basic lighting, so a key light, fill light, rim light, and then I'd start then refining the look of the bird. So going through, making sure that the feathers don't look like they're just repeated. I duplicated it and then moved one set of feathers, and that means that you get lots of randomness just by moving a little bit. You can see there it bulked it up quite quickly with just that one little move. And then obviously the coloration isn't helping here, because even the beak isn't painted correctly at this point. So once you've got that overall block out, paint it, as I said, with alpha brushes. That's exactly the same model with just a paint over and a tweak. So that you know, from this, so from the red bird to that white bald-headed eagle, it is a very, very simple transition. It's just a case of literally painting it up, picking the right colors, using the right alphas, and we've got loads of those available if you need those, and then using a combination of the move tool and things like the if you're ever at a point where the feathers are sticking out and they're not so good, then just even smooth it down. So use the smooth tool to bring it back into, you know, the feather itself, to bring it back into a shape that you like. You can see there now, this is back on the red-headed version of it, and it could be any eagle at this point. You know, we tried loads when I was learning these sort of feathers, and very quickly, I hope you can see that the feathers do look quite. They do look quite strong, whether they be the white ones or the brown ones. And here we are, just with a very quick screen grab of the final one. You can see it's ended up looking quite nice. We did a paint over at the end, but we got it looking quite good quite quickly. So that's when I decided it was time to start thinking about the tutorial, and that's what you've got today. So I hope you're enjoying these videos. We do these mostly every Friday and every Wednesday, and if you do like them, please give the video a thumbs up. It does help us to get in front of other artists. If you are enjoying it, subscribe to the channel. We've got a membership coming very, very soon now, probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks, which will give you access to live streams, and we're basically going to build up our membership to give you some cool freebies, so look out for that as well. And if you have subscribed, then hit the notification bell so we can let you know when we're dropping new content. Have a great week, and show me what you can make with feathers.